During the summer of 2019, I embarked on a camping trip with a group of friends. We chose a secluded spot near a tranquil lake, far from the hustle and bustle of city life. What was meant to be a fun and carefree adventure took an unexpected turn into a chilling experience that none of us could have anticipated. Our camping trip began with excitement as we set up our tents and gathered around a cozy campfire. We spent the day hiking, fishing, and sharing stories under the starlit sky. The crackling fire and the soothing sounds of nature put us at ease as we settled in for the night. As darkness enveloped the campsite, we retired to our tents, ready to rest after an eventful day. I zipped up my sleeping bag, trying to ignore the faint rustling noises that seemed to echo from the woods. At first, I attributed the sounds to animals scurrying around in search of food. However, the rustling sounds persisted, growing louder and more deliberate. My heart raced as I strained to listen, realizing that the noises were coming from just beyond our campsite. I exchanged uneasy glances with my friends, who had also taken notice of the unsettling commotion. Then, the sounds changed. It was no longer a gentle rustling. Instead, we heard distinct footsteps crunching on twigs and leaves. The footsteps were deliberate and purposeful, causing an eerie tension to settle over us. Our initial sense of security vanished, replaced by a growing sense of unease. One of my friends suggested that it might be another camper who had lost their way or was wandering too close to our camp. We decided to call out, asking if anyone was there. To our surprise, there was no response, only the sound of footsteps coming to a halt. An unsettling silence descended upon the camp as we strained to see through the darkness. We grabbed our flashlights, their beams cutting through the night as we scanned the area. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a chilling whisper, unintelligible words carried by the wind. My heart raced as I turned to my friends, their faces reflecting the same mixture of fear and confusion that I felt. We were no longer convinced that the footsteps belonged to a lost camper. Something about the situation felt deeply wrong, as if an unwanted presence was lurking just beyond our vision. We debated whether to pack up and leave immediately or to stay put and wait for morning. The thought of venturing into the darkness to pack our things was almost as daunting as staying in place, unsure of who or what might be nearby. Our sense of vulnerability was overwhelming, and it became clear that none of us were willing to sleep that night. We spent the remainder of the night huddled together in our tents, listening intently for any sign of movement or sound. As the first light of dawn broke, we ventured cautiously outside, relieved to find no trace of the mysterious visitor. To this day, we can't explain what happened that night. Was it a curious animal, a lost camper, or something more sinister? Whatever the case, the experience left a lasting impact on all of us. This happened to me in the late fall of 2015. I decided to embark on a solo camping trip in a remote forest area near my town in Vermont. I arrived at the campsite early in the afternoon, eager to set up my tent and immerse myself in the beauty of the wilderness. The tall trees provided ample shade, and the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant songs of birds seemed to welcome me to this peaceful haven. I spent the day exploring, fishing by the nearby stream, and basking in the serenity that surrounded me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I gathered wood for a campfire and sat down to enjoy a meal cooked over the open flames. With a satisfied stomach and a sense of contentment, I settled into my sleeping bag inside the tent, ready to let the natural symphony of the night make me fall asleep. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, I awoke to the unsettling feeling that I was being watched somewhere from the forest. My heart raced as I peered out of the tent, scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. My flashlight revealed nothing out of the ordinary, and I chalked up the sensation to my imagination playing tricks on me. Attempting to calm my nerves, I lay back down, but sleep proved elusive. The feeling of being watched persisted, and a nagging unease settled in the pit of my stomach. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I drifted into a restless slumber. The next day, I went about my activities with a lingering sense of unease, unable to shake off the feeling that I was not alone. As I gathered firewood, I caught a glimpse of someone standing among the trees on the edge of the campsite. It was a brief glimpse, but the image of their figure sent shivers down my spine. Struggling to maintain my composure, I called out a tentative greeting, hoping to dispel the tension that had gripped me. The figure simply stood there, unmoving, its face obscured by the shadows. I felt a growing sense of dread, an instinctual understanding that this encounter was not a chance one. The figure melted into the shadows before I could discern any more details, leaving me both bewildered and deeply unsettled. I spent the day contemplating the encounter, unsure of what to make of it. Was it a fellow camper or something more sinister? The uncertainty gnawed at me, casting a shadow over what was meant to be a rejuvenating experience. As night fell once again, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. Every rustling leaf and distant sound seemed to amplify my anxiety. In a desperate attempt to calm my racing thoughts, I began telling myself that I was being paranoid, that the previous night's encounter was likely nothing more than a trick of the mind. As I lay in my tent, I listened intently to the sounds of the forest, hoping to catch any indication of the figure's presence. Hours passed, and the quietude of the woods was broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl. Just as I was beginning to believe that my fears were baseless, I heard a faint rustling outside my tent. I held my breath, straining to hear any further movement. My heart pounded in my chest as the rustling grew closer, accompanied by the soft sound of footsteps. Panic surged through me as I realized that someone was outside my tent, moving deliberately and methodically. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed 911, whispering my location and my situation as quietly as possible. My voice trembled as I explained that I was alone in the woods, being stalked by an unknown individual. The operator assured me that help was on the way, and I prayed that they would arrive in time. My heart raced as I continued to listen to the footsteps circling my tent, the rustling growing louder and more frenzied. It felt like an eternity before I heard the distant sound of sirens approaching. Relief flooded over me as the lights of the police vehicles illuminated the darkness, chasing away the sinister presence that had haunted me. The police arrived, searching the area meticulously. Moments later, they emerged from the woods, leading a man in handcuffs. My heart pounded as I caught sight of his face, the same face that had haunted my thoughts since our initial encounter. He had a knife on him, confirming the danger that had been lurking in the shadows. As the police took the man away, they assured me that I was safe now. I thanked them profusely, feeling a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear. The encounter served as a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates safety from danger. To this day, the memory of that camping trip haunts me. So I decided to head out for a camping adventure in Sweden. I'd heard all about the gorgeous landscapes and wanted a taste of that natural beauty. So I'm in the middle of the Swedish wilderness, surrounded by dense forests and a serene lake. It's all calm and quiet, and I'm thinking I've hit the jackpot for a tranquil getaway. Set up my tent, packed some grub, and was all set for a chill time. First couple of days were awesome. Hiked, fished, and soaked in the breathtaking views. It was like something out of a postcard. Nights were equally cool, roasting marshmallows by the campfire, staring up at the stars. You know, all that good stuff. But then, things took a turn for the seriously bizarre. So on the third night, I start noticing that the usual sounds of the wild are totally gone. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, just dead silence. And I mean, I get it. Nature has its moods, but this was a whole new level of quiet. And that's when the heebie-jeebies kicked in. Suddenly, the peaceful vibe was swapped out for this creepy feeling like something was off. I was on high alert, scanning the dark like a detective. My chill campfire sesh had transformed into a full-on, is that a twig snapping, paranoia fest. Then, out of nowhere, the normal silence was replaced with a faint whispering, like ghostly voices carried on the wind. Now, I'm not a superstitious person, but my skin was crawling. I listened real close, trying to catch what they were saying, but it was all gibberish. The whispers seemed to come from every direction, closing in on me like a weird echo chamber. I wasn't about to be some horror movie cliché, so I ducked into my tent and whipped out my phone, ready to call for backup. As I'm explaining the whole deal to the 911 operator, I can feel the tension rising. They tell me they're sending help, but every second feels like an eternity. Finally, I hear footsteps in the distance, like angels singing in hiking boots. Search and rescue to the rescue. Their headlights sliced through the darkness, and I've never been happier to see a group of people in my life. The whispers faded into thin air, and the rescuers were like a beacon of normalcy. They assured me I wasn't going crazy, that atmospheric stuff can mess with your head sometimes. I mean, sure, that's logical and all, but that night, it was like I'd stumbled into an alternate reality. And let me tell you, those rescue folks were like my personal saviors. So my camping trip turned into an encounter with the Twilight Zone, a reminder that Mother Nature has her tricks. Sweden's wilderness, you're beautiful and all, but I didn't sign up for a supernatural sound show. And even though we got to the bottom of it, that eerie night will stay with me, a reminder that even in the most serene places, nature can throw you a real curveball.